All right, welcome to the We the People Meet.org meeting, and we're going to call it a board meeting just because we the people started this country, and it's kind of like a business. And we are the board members, the employees are the elected officials, and we should be meeting more often as a board to discuss issues going on and to try to give direction to our elected officials. So we're going to call it a board meeting today. Welcome to the board meeting. Kent Bowman's with me. And we're going to be discussing a lot of issues. We have a list of issues that we can start with. I'm going to share my screen real quick so we can see those. Okay. Big news of the week was the shooting in Michigan. Unfortunate circumstance there, and so I just wanted to talk about that real quick just to see if you have any thoughts, Kent, or anyone else that might join us in the meeting. But sad thing to happen, especially the day after our prophet had passed away. Um, Interestingly, there's a lot of reasons why someone might want to hurt members of our church. None of them, in my mind, good reasons, but um, a little bit is coming out more and more about this person that he may have been upset with the church in some way. But it's still kind of early to know exactly what his motivations were. I was surprised to see that they had a picture of his house, or they found a picture of his house online that had a Trump Pence sign on it, which might indicate he might have been a Trump supporter, which very unusual for a Trump supporter to bomb or to go and shoot up a church, a Mormon church. So anyway, that was surprising to me. But anyway, any thoughts on that, Kent?
My only thoughts are, you know, we're kind of speculating at this point because there needs to be a lot more investigation. But
Yeah,
but I, based on everything I've read and heard so far, I think it's again a situation of mental health problems.
I think so.
This man had drug and alcohol problems in his past. He he had a very difficult situation with his son having a very significant disease that was kind of bankrupting the family in a lot of ways. And he had to leave his role to be able to care for the son more.
Mhm.
And all those things tend to put incredible pressure on people. And, with so much negativity in the world out there, coming from all different angles, I think people's mental health becomes easier and easier to break down. And so I think at the end of the day, we'll find out that, at least the initial indications are that he did have very negative feelings about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We don't know for what reasons yet, but I think it was exacerbated by the mental health conditions. And then, when that snaps, with the tools that we now have as human beings with guns and cars and, IEDs and fire, when we lose control, the amount of damage that can be done is going to be significant.
Mhm. And Charlie Kirk's wife was a very good example of what should be done in cases like this. The shooter has passed away. The family of the shooter, I'm sure, is suffering as in all cases, and a lot of forgiveness is really in order, I think, regarding these issues.
Yeah.
That's what the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints go along with, is forgiveness in these cases, and Christ's teachings of turn the other cheek and forgive 70 times, seven times, and all those things are, that's what the world needs, is more understanding, more forgiveness,
Yeah.
more talking without anger, more discussing rather than reacting. And
And
So,
I think it was really cool, Rob, that you had the bishop of the local ward there. I saw an interview with him,
mhm,
and he was expressing that very sentiment.
mhm,
And and I thought it was very impressive to see the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer.
mhm.
Uh, I mean, it could have been a quote from, from Russell M. Nelson, quite
Ah,
frankly, the way she talked about it, and and how we need to rally around our neighbors and not point fingers and take care of those that are suffering and so forth. And so I think there's been a lot of very positive comments made. Obviously, there's been some negative ones when you look online and that, but I think coming from the local bishop, from the governor, from the police that I saw in interviews, they seem to be doing a good job of trying to de-escalate anything and then remind us to be our better selves.
yep, it's great. An interesting side thought. Anytime I see really anger enticing uh, posts on Facebook, etc., when you look at the profile, a lot of times they're kind of invisible profiles. They don't have a lot of local information. You don't, it looks almost like it's set up as a bot or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and most of the well thought out answers tend to have people that are willing to be themselves, and the anonymity of the internet really brings out the worst in people sometimes when they think they can say whatever they think without being held accountable for it. It
Yeah,
brings out the worst, but a lot of good quotes you can find by people that are being themselves on the internet.
very true.
All right, and then the next topic that I had, can you see my screen, by the way? I don't see the circle around it that I normally
I
see.
can see it. It's kind of small.
What does it
If
say?
you can make it any bigger, great, but I
Does
can
that
still
help?
read it. That's great. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
So, I didn't get a chance to see the Spencer Cox interview. I do want to. So, but maybe you could tell me a little bit about what that talked about.
Yeah, it was really excellent. I forget the gentleman's name on 60 Minutes that was the interviewer. Scott Petty was his name, and he did he asked some provoking questions of the
Uh-huh.
governor. An example I'll give you would be, he said, some people watching this show would think that you're very naive and that you really haven't thought through well, some of your comments and then he said, and Steve Bannon has commented through his podcast or whatever that you are an embarrassment to our country and to your state.
Wow.
What do you say to people like that? So there were some questions like that.
Mhm.
And I thought the governor was absolutely remarkable when you watch his responses. There was no defensiveness, no getting his back up. It was like, well, and one comment to Bannon's comment was that he says, well, I'm actually grateful to live in a country where he can speak what he believes, right? That's his opinion, and he can make that opinion. And we need to recognize that we all have the right to our opinions and our beliefs, and to hear those and digest those without going to violence. And so, and he talked about again disagreeing better, and how we as a people, as a country, we're broken and we've got to fix it, because if we are going to continue down this path of violence begets violence,
Mhm.
nobody's going to win that.
No.
And even those that may quote win by having the ability to inflict more violence than the other will have a society that isn't going to be a very good one. And so I thought his comments were really good in a lot of different ways, and definitely worth finding the you know the the video of that and taking a look at it.
Right. Interestingly, so because I've been very conservative over the years, part of a lot of conservative groups, um, people will, label, okay, that person's not conservative. So Governor Cox, conservative groups have said he's not conservative, but I believe in giving credit where credit's due, no matter where it comes from. When someone does something good or says something good, they should deserve the credit for it. And Cox has done a lot of good things and said a lot of good things, especially recently, and I think he deserves credit for that. Um, I I think that he got in trouble a little bit about smart cities that he seemed to be promoting at one time. But besides that, I've seen a lot of good things from Cox. So I really liked his comments right after the Charlie Kirk murder too. The things
Yeah.
he talked about were really showed wisdom, and so I think calling out the good from all of our officials is good. Uh,
One other thing that Scott Petty asked, kind of from the other direction,
oh, is it
was
Scott Pelley? I think
from
it's Scott
Pelly. Did I say
Pelley.
Petty? Yeah,
Yeah, I
Pelly.
know it's Scott Petty, so
Okay.
that was interesting.
Scott
Yeah,
Pelly. Thank you
yeah.
for correcting me there.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the from the other side, he asked the question, you know, there's a lot of people out there that have heard you and say you ought to be running for president,
Hmm.
and Cox's response was, well, that's never going to happen. He said, that's never been something I would be interested in.
Hmm.
And then Pelley said, well, they also say that you would never have a chance, because of the way the primaries and so forth work
Uh-huh.
in your country. And he said, that's true. He said, there would be too big of a group of people that would not want me to be in a position like that. And I would not ever really have a chance to do that. It would never be in the cards. So
Mhm.
that was another interesting approach where he acknowledged that, his, the way I viewed it,
Mhm.
maybe biased, but I viewed it as him saying, if you're kind of moderate, if you're kind of in the middle and you're
Mhm.
trying to bring the two bases together in some way, the you know the diehard members of the party, whether it's Democrat or Republican, are never going to really go for someone that's more moderate. They're
Mhm.
going to insist on them, following every aspect of the platform if there is one,
Right.
and anybody that isn't going to be at the absolute edge of that all the time wouldn't really have a chance to make it. So that was an interesting comment as well.
Yeah. Interestingly, that has played out that you've got especially some extremes on both sides sometimes that get into office. I would view Trump as a moderate, and I'll the conversation we get into when we look at an undercall conspiracy book later will kind of show what I mean by that. You probably remember that part of the book where it talks about the political spectrum,
Yeah. Yep.
government control versus anarchy on one side versus total government control on the other. Trump, they call him a fascist. On the leftists call him a fascist because he does believe in a lot of government control, and it's not the control that they want to see. And that would put some more on the more government side of things versus the anarchy or less government side of things. And so that's how I view the political spectrum: is the right is anarchy, the left is total control of government. And I view Trump as more on the center of the line and sometimes even left on the government control spectrum. And someone like Rand Paul would be probably more on the right side, constitutional conservative, more towards the less government side of things. So
Yep.
interesting. And I don't know where I'd put Cox on that. I'd probably put him more towards the middle, not on the right, not on the left, but sort of more towards the middle. But
Yep.
anyway, next topic, imminent government shutdown. It's interesting. Maybe I'm not as listening as much to the news on TV or whatnot, but I haven't heard much talk about it, and the fear of a government shutdown as much this time as in previous times. I don't know. Have you heard a lot of that, Ken?
I haven't spent a lot of time. I have heard, that it's like a foregone conclusion at this point. We will be
Yep.
shutting down tomorrow morning at
Hmm.
12:01 a.m.
Hmm.
Uh, and the biggest impacts are going to be on the more discretionary funding aspects of the government. So, for example, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, they have to continue. Those payments will be made. Uh,
Yep.
the military will be uh, they'll have to report, although they won't be paid.
Mhm.
The same I think with like Capitol police officers and those kind of things. They have to come to work, but they're not paid.
So they deem what's necessary versus less necessary, I guess.
Right,
And
right.
they fund the ones that are most necessary.
So any things like research or what was the thing that was well, like call centers, like if you're going to call into Social Security to
Mhm.
ask questions or call into the IRS to ask questions, those will probably not be either not functional at all or significantly reduced.
Mm.
So anything that's that isn't absolutely necessary will be taking a back seat or
Mhm.
non-existent. And
Mhm.
of course, the Trump administration has threatened that they will take this opportunity to take any of those non-essential,
That's the word, non-essential. Yep.
yeah, those non-essential areas and actually fire those people. So,
And then
um,
they have to apply for the position and yeah, that's what I heard too, that they're going to make it so that people have to apply for the positions again after this. So this may be a little more of a permanent reduction in staff
mhm,
ultimately, which, it's funny. Ever since I was a little kid, every politician out there said that they're going to do something like this, reduce government size and scope, trying to get the will of the people on their side because most people do want less government intrusion, less government spending, which ultimately means you're paying less people to work for you. So this is kind of a threat in a way, and it's going to be hard for some people, but a lot of the people that view themselves as conservative, more wanting less government intrusion in the lives of people and less government spending, probably view this as a positive thing. But,
they may. I think and again, I'm frustrated. I'd like to know what really has happened with Doge so far.
right.
What have we really saved, and what haven't we? And
Hold Doge accountable like Doge is trying to hold the others accountable. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and so the hires that I mean, we've had what 100, maybe 200,000 people. I'm not. I shouldn't say. I don't really know, but large numbers of people um, have now been uh, contacted and asked to come back to their roles.
Uh-huh.
And so they've basically had 6 or 7 months of vacation, paid vacation, and now they're being asked to come back and work, right?
Interesting.
Um,
And a lot of the changes that were proposed by Doge got shot down by usually what I would term liberal judges, that were on the other side of the political spectrum from Trump that would shut it down. A lot of the things.
Maybe, but some of those judges were conservatives too. And I don't think the problem was the idea that you can go out and fire people. I think the problem was is that there was no um, really effort to decide, is this person needed or not? It was just a random cut,
Mhm.
as evidenced by our nuclear program, right? Where all of a sudden all the people that were monitoring that were gone. And they had to immediately go back and hire them back. And,
Mhm.
and similarly with the IRS, that all of a sudden there weren't enough people to even begin to collect taxes. And so, we weren't going to be able to fund the government, right? And so immediately they went back and hired back.
Mm.
So I think more of the issue, and quite frankly, the courts have come back fairly strongly now and said, yeah, you can fire people. I think they've given him the ability to do it more broadly.
Right.
Uh,
I think
Initially,
the
no,
the
but
appeals, the higher courts were more
yeah,
in favor of that. That's right. I saw that
yeah.
the other day. They gave him that permission.
But
Um,
the issue is, I think everybody, you and I are business people,
right.
we don't like waste and fraud. But we also know that you got to have a certain level of personnel to achieve your goals. And the last thing, I spent a lot of my career out there doing cost studies
Right.
to help companies decrease costs and enhance revenues at the same time.
Hmm.
And it would take us, it would take us, 50% of our time on the engagement to go out and talk to people and understand the processes and know what is superfluous and what isn't, and where can cuts be made and things done better. And there just wasn't that kind of time devoted by Doge to that. It was simply 25%, you're gone, 20%, you're gone. And so I think, the bottom line is going to be with this next round of, if they really do fire people, is is it going to be looking at the individuals and their specific roles, or is it going to be, now you're in a non-essential area and we're just eliminating all of you?
Hmm. Yeah.
And then
Maybe
we'll,
there's going to be some of both of those.
yeah.
Or
So
what's
that's
unconstitutional? I mean, I'd love it if they decided, okay, this activity is unconstitutional and leave it up to the states or leave it up to the individual towns or cities or people or whoever it should be with. But there's a lot of unconstitutional activities done by our government,
well, maybe unconstitutional in the sense it was never directly provided for,
right?
which I understand.
Hmm.
But as an example, I'll just pick an example. Um, the National Weather Service.
Hmm.
Okay, that's not in the Constitution.
Right.
Back in those days, there probably wasn't even an idea you could do anything to hand a kind of, there wasn't the technology to predict hurricanes and watch them and monitor them and that kind of thing. And now, if you said, well, we're just going to let Mississippi do its own monitoring, or North Carolina do its own monitoring, because that's not a function of the government that we should be funding. Well, Mississippi couldn't afford it, so
Hmm.
it's not going to happen. And North Carolina maybe can, but their approach is going to be much more limited than what a federal kind of entity could do. And so then you say, as a people, you say, well, are we better off just saying, let's just let it happen as it happens? We'll do our best with, meager efforts to say, get prepared for a hurricane. We don't know if it's 4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5 level, but there's probably something brewing out there. Or do we say, no, that's in the national interest, kind of like having a military.
Hmm.
It's in the national interest to protect people's lives, and so that should be something the federal government does, and make that decision. So I'm
Right.
with you. I
Well, and
think that,
and according to the Constitution, Congress should say, oh yeah, let's devote X amount of money to that particular activity, and if that is something that they decide should be funded, and so it still could be something funded by the federal government, and shot down by a judge if the judge says it's not constitutional. So there are ways to get that funded if it's deemed constitutional by a judge. But
but
anyway.
but if what you're saying is true, though, Rob,
Mhm.
everything that the government is currently doing
Mhm.
is constitutional.
Oh, that's true. If it went through that process, but yeah, I agree that there's a lot that is not constitutional that judges are letting fly by. I believe that is true.
Yeah. So that's I think the argument there, and so the bottom line is, this shutdown, when it happened in Trump's first term, it went 35 days, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pain. I mean, I remember, because of some friends I have that live up in Ogden, these were IRS agents, not agents, but they worked for the IRS.
Right.
And they were to the point where they were saying, we've been now, 35 days. We can't, we have no money.
Hmm.
It's not like we've got big giant bank accounts that we can draw on. And so they're saying we're going to have to quit and go find another job somehow. And and then it obviously meant some did that, others didn't, and then it was resolved after 35 days. But there's going to be a lot of hardship on people, that have to go to work, but they're not going to get their paychecks.
Yeah. Well, eventually they will, right? The government will eventually pay everyone that has worked. Legally, they have to, and they'll pay them. It's just there's no one to write the paychecks right now. So they're, and I would hope that most people get paid even during this time. Um,
They can't, but they can't.
I will
They
say
can't.
that I have a brother in the military that didn't, I know there was a delay in payments at, at some
And,
time.
and I agree with you. You say, well, just hang on. It's only going to be a week. It's only going to be 2 weeks. Nobody knows, right?
It could be
It's
long.
like you and
Yeah.
I can sit here very, cavalierly and say, hey, eventually you're going to get paid. Just
Right.
suck it up and
Mhm.
live through it. Eventually you're going to get paid. But if you're the guy or gal that, your rent's due, your kids need food,
Mhm.
and you're not getting paid, but you're going, okay, maybe next week. Okay, maybe next week.
Mhm.
That 35 days can do some major,
It
mental
can.
damage
Yeah,
to you.
and honestly, if someone's working, I think the people that are writing the checks should be working. So I would disagree with holding back paychecks for anyone that they deem as essential. They should be getting paid. Those that are deemed non-essential and aren't working, maybe they should wait to get a paycheck and look for another job quickly if they can't wait. It's kind of like any other business. I've got a business that struggles at times, and the beginning of this year, I had to look at it and say, am I gonna need to cut costs here or there or whatnot? And there were some changes I had to make that were really hard. And they probably were hard on a couple of individuals also, some of the decisions that I had to make for the health of my company. And the government has operated so long on, oh, just tax more, just raise taxes and we'll cover any problem we had by raising taxes or getting more money in. And there is a limit, when individuals, when they spend too much money, more than their yearly income is for too long, pretty soon they're in a tight spot. And I would say the federal government is, I don't know where that tight spot is for a government in relation as compared to an individual, but with our debt, I haven't looked recently, but over 30 trillion, I think.
36.
36 trillion. I think it's time that the government start looking at places to cut more seriously. So,
No, agreed. And I don't think anybody would disagree uh, that we need to find ways to cut back
mhm.
government spending.
Right.
Absolutely.
But it's going
It's
to be
just
painful, no
it's just
matter
the
what.
manner of how you go about it, right?
Right.
It's like the guy that walks into a company, doesn't know anything about it, and starts firing off orders on what to stop doing and who to fire and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That
Bull in a china
works.
shop.
Yeah,
Right.
that works. You can reduce the spend,
Uh,
but you probably will kill the company too. Or
right.
versus the guy that comes in and says, okay, I'm going to give it a month or two or three and learn what's going on here and understand where the superfluous activity is happening and
Hmm.
so forth. And then I'm going to come in and make surgical cuts or say, we don't need a Department of Education. Just get the whole thing gone, right?
Yeah.
But understand what is happening there. And and then make quality decisions. So I think that's the only difference that
Yeah.
um,
Agreed. I I've seen both ways, and I'm more the let's look carefully and see what changes we can make. Not too quickly. I'm more the type that gives it a month or two and researches. So,
I mean, another great example, and again, this I don't know if you looked at what Pete Hegseth did this weekend,
I don't know.
but he ordered a meeting of all the generals and brought them to Virginia. Okay, so these were people that were in Japan, in Korea, in Germany. The cost has to be outlandish to bring all these people, put them in one place, and give them a talk, right?
Right.
And so you say, okay, does that make sense when you could do it on a Zoom call like this?
Hmm.
But to fly them, to hotel them, to provide them with cars, to feed them, everything is a big, big number that's our tax dollars, right?
Right.
And does that make sense? And then you think, well, maybe this is some really big deal. Well, at least the reporting on it, the people were inside the meeting, and the reporting it was pretty much a pep talk that kind of said, if you have a beard, shave it off. We don't have beards anymore.
Hmm.
And anything, basically if you've got some soldier or some cadet or whatever that is you don't think is doing the right thing, you're not going to be held accountable for significant sanctions that you put against that individual. You can throw them in the brig, you can do different things like that.
Uh,
No one's going to be looking at you to be kind and gentle. This is a warrior organization. It's going to be that way. So,
yeah.
and again, I'm not there. I mean, I'm not Pete Hegseth. I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not those generals.
Right.
And so maybe it was necessary to do that quote face to face. But when you're in a big auditorium, with 1,000 generals, um, it's kind of hard to be face to face that way too.
Right.
But
Right.
but I'm with you. I think our government needs to start thinking about how to do things more cost effectively so that our tax dollars are well used and we don't need to have tax increases.
Right. Right. I want to talk about the book that we're reading, and they call it Conspiracy. I'm just going to change this to thoughts.
Yeah.
The general thoughts I went through and put down what I thought the main points of each section were that I read. Just kind of want to go through them one at a time and see if we agree or if we want to bring in other things. But um, his first point is that history is full of conspiracies. Conspiracy theory of history is supported by historical facts. Of course, there's a lot of random things that happen in history, that aren't conspiracies. But his point is there's also a lot of conspiracy planned by small groups, things that happen. Overthrowing of government is almost always a conspiracy. A group of people comes in and makes a plan to do that. There's certain things that often are. But anyway, um, that I don't know if that's arguable that history doesn't have conspiracies in it. But
No, I think conspiracy, I mean, it's in our law, right?
mhm.
You can be convicted of conspiring to do evil, right?
Right.
We know from a scriptural perspective, that there are bad groups of people that have existed way, way, way back there trying to overthrow the good. The Gadianton robbers is the name that was used in the scriptures, at least at one point.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would not argue with the fact that there is conspiracy out there of evil people to do evil things. Um, but I would also add everything is not a conspiracy.
Right. Right. And there's always I don't think it's unhealthy for some people to really look at a possibility of conspiracies each time something happens, but they'll be considered the wackos or the people that are paranoid or whatnot. But, without people looking into those things, then you'll have things that are bigger and planned and things that will go unnoticed if there's not a few skeptical people out there. So I'm not as against people being skeptical and looking for conspiracies and things that happen. I don't think it's unhealthy for that to be there. Um, but yeah, a lot of times there's more read into things than it actually is there, oftentimes. And sometimes there's less read into things than is actually there because there's less skeptical people. So his next point is the elite have attacked the conspiracy theory of history by doing the following: ignoring personal attacks, ridicule, and satire. For those that are looking and searching to see if there is deeper conspiracies in relation to historical happenings. Um, and I think that's true too. I've seen that a lot. And then his next point is that there is a group of powerful elite that comprise a clique of insiders that control current/past events and control the media message of these events. And he pointed out that there's a professor named Professor Carrol Quigley that was an insider, part of these groups that kind of exposed them, but said he agreed with them. Said he thought that their means or their goals of a worldwide governing bodies and more control of the people was an okay thing. He thought that was okay. He just thought that they should be more open about it, was what Carol Quigley's thing was, according to this author. And anyway, that's the point I got from that. Um, he the author defined communism, which I don't think I necessarily agree with his definition of what communism is, but I agree with his definition that exists, that there is an international conspiratorial drive for power on the part of men in high places willing to use any means to bring about their desired aim of global conquest. I actually agree with him that there exists that group. I don't know that I would define communism that way, but anyway, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the idea at the time he wrote the book
Mhm.
was easy to say that communism was you know, the bad guy, not the bad guy, that communism was the tool that was being used by these elite financial people he calls the insiders. Um, and so even though they didn't believe in communism, they encouraged it because it would assist in forming governments. And what the elite, in his view, what the elite financial insiders wanted to do was have governments that were highly centralized.
Mhm.
The higher the centralization of the government, the fewer people you had to control the country.
Right,
You
right.
know, so if if the president of the United States is under your control, and he has all power within the U.S. to do whatever he wants, he doesn't really have a check and balance system against him. He can just do whatever. Then, if you control him, you can control just about everything that takes place in the U.S. in that example.
Right.
And so he didn't like the czarists in Russia, right? Not he, the insiders didn't like the czarists in Russia because they were not centralized. They had a lot of control, but little pieces all over the place. And so he wanted a quote Soviet Union that was run by one small group of people, preferably just the leader, and then they could control them. So I think he was saying communism was the tool.
Yeah,
And in reality, I mean, in a lot of ways, communism, as it was back in the time he wrote this book, is kind of gone. I mean, if you look at Russia, it's not really communist. No, they don't even say they're communists. They
right.
don't even say they're socialists. They say that they're a republic. and they have elections and so forth. And even in China, I mean, you have the Chinese Communist Party that still exists there, but in a lot of ways, you know, they they've kind of abandoned the way they talk about communism, and it's more, no, we're a republic as well, right? And we can vote and stuff. So I think that idea, and then when you look at the Middle East, which is where I'm most involved,
Mhm.
there's really no communism whatsoever in the Middle East. It's all more theocracies that control those areas in most cases.
Right. And for purposes of the book reading, I I believe that they were using communism before, but the same groups are still in power and they are using different methods now um, than communism. Communism got so out of favor in the United States that it was, kind of something they couldn't really support. But I think they're still using the same methods. They're just not using communism per se, but socialism. So socialism and just trying to control different countries by getting, like you said, one person in power or a small elite group of people in power that they have some sort of control over. I don't think the methods of how the world is operating have changed at all, except for the countries are not pushed to be communist as much. Now they're more pushed to be socialist, with power still at the top, a stronger executive branch in each of the countries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Deceptions of the globalists and Marx and socialism is inevitable. So they're trying to convince people that socialism or is inevitable and is a natural byproduct of uprising of the downtrodden masses that will naturally happen, and it's going to happen in every place. And his point later was these downtrodden don't really have the time or means or money to really uprise or make a big enough rebellion. They have to be funded, and that um, the financiers were the ones that really organized a lot of the revolutions that resulted in communism back in these days, back in the 50s and 60s, 40s. So
Mhm.
let's see. He put forth this more accurate political spectrum. Here's the one that you might see where fascism is on the right, communism on the left, and more of a mainstream in the middle. And he said, really, what is in the middle is socialism, where the government kind of grows slowly through a socialistic, um, slow merge towards socialism, and they call it democracy. Um, but what a better uh, spectrum is to have total government on the left and anarchy on the right. Because in the end, if you've got a small group of people or one individual in charge of people and they have complete power, that's all should be on one side. It's all pretty much the same thing, whether they're calling them fascists or socialists or pharaohs or communists or whatever. When the people are not in control of the government, but the government's in control of the people, it's this spectrum. And this is a spectrum I've understood my whole life and really judged people by. Are they for less government or are they for more government?
And what's the white part of that second one?
This one right here,
Hmm.
I would say, yeah, he didn't label that. For me, I would say that's pretty much mainstream, middle of the road, people that don't really um, go by the Constitution, but kind of go with what seems good at the time without any real clear direction. I think it tends to go towards more and more government control. I think that's my interpretation of this area. If you're a strict constitutionalist, you stay within this area right here where there might be a little bit of leeway, but there you come to a point where, wait, the Constitution didn't say that a president can go and bomb someplace without getting the Congress to vote on it. When you draw a line and use the Constitution as your guide, then that's what I view this area. And I view this area as where we are as a country, where we don't really strictly follow the Constitution. We just kind of go with the flow, and government grows and the debt grows, and we keep adding new laws and working our way towards socialism. So I view this as a slippery slope towards socialism. I don't know what the author would view that because he didn't label it, but
Yeah.
um, he
And
put
again, the other thing I thought was interesting is he said this was kind of, what did he call this? The correct way of looking at your options.
uh-huh.
But, where does he put a theocracy?
I think a theocracy would be over here too.
But
Um,
why doesn't he put it in there?
Pharaohism is getting close to that. But yeah, that's if the government's in total control. So yeah, let's say Joseph Smith time, if Joseph Smith was the prophet as well as the governor of Nauvoo, I think it was, right? Wasn't he both? And was it was that city run more as a theocracy? I'm not sure, but I would put that on the left. If the person in charge has control to determine who works where and who owns what, and I would say that kind of goes more on the left too, wouldn't you think?
You'd have to. I
Yeah,
mean, to me, because Pharaohism is
mhm.
really more like a kingdom.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And Caesarism, Julius Caesar was kind of an absolute, dictator.
Right.
So I think Caesarism is kind of like a dictatorship,
Hmm.
um, even more so than fascism
Right.
and communism. Pharaohism is an absolute king that rules.
Uh-huh.
Theocracy, you may have councils,
Hmm.
um, but the theology is going to dictate that the people can't counteract the theology.
Right.
So if you were in a constitutional republic and you said, well, wait a minute, I don't like the idea that women are second class citizens, they can't go to school. I mean, that's what the theology says, as an example in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The theology says women are second class citizens, they can't go to school. If someone comes to the home, they have to go into the back of the home unless the husband absolutely allows them to come to the front. And so if you were saying, well, I'm in that theology, and I think women should have the right to do those three things, then I mean, you wouldn't be able to pursue that because
Yeah.
it's against the theology, right?
Right.
So I think theology has to go over there with total government as well, although there may be, some councils or something that you could.
Right. Well, and one difference on some theologies, not all of them, is the freedom to go and come as you please or choose to be part of that. Let's take Nauvoo for instance. People could leave at their own free will and say, I don't want to be part of this anymore. I'm going to go live in Chicago instead of Nauvoo. You know what I mean?
But
That
but yes and no. But but that theology isn't practiced in Chicago, right?
true, right?
So theology is saying you have to follow what we're saying or you cannot live here,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and even worse is you have to follow what we're saying and you can't leave. That's even worse. And that's often what you see. There's no option to leave for some places and it or we will kill you.
Yeah,
Sometimes is something that goes to the further extreme or we're going to burn your house down or you know what I mean.
yeah.
So there's yeah, that's maybe a different issue, but anyway, he then makes the point that socialism is opposite of free enterprise and enriches the elite while pretending to do the opposite. And that's something that he argues throughout the book that the elitists get benefits of a lot of the things that happen through as we go more socialist.
And,
Um,
and my only comment, I don't disagree with the setup. I mean, I think he left some things out.
Right.
but I don't disagree with the setup. The issue that really comes down to all of these
Uh-huh.
at the end of the day is, what is the quality of the leader?
Hmm.
Because you and I know that, you know, at the end of this earth's life, we're going to have a kingdom.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not going to be a democracy, it's
Mm.
a kingdom. And you know, Jesus Christ is the king. And if you have a righteous king, life can be great, because that righteous king is going to adjudicate all of the unfairness that may exist, and you're going to get the benefit of that. Um, you could have a socialistic government that, if the leadership were honorable, credible people that were true, they cared about the people more than they cared about themselves, socialism could be a good government, in the sense that those that are needy would get what they needed, because they honestly couldn't provide it for themselves, right? And capitalism, you know, I think he had two versions of that. It was the extreme capital, I forget the names he gave it, but there was a good capitalism, and then there was a bad capitalism, right? Where you have these these monopolies and oligarchies that control certain things in free enterprise, because they have all the power, but it's bad because they have too much of it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, I think for us as human beings
Hmm.
on this earth right now, the constitutional republic is, with a limited government, is the right place to be.
Right.
But if our leaders are bad, and they put out the facade that we have a constitutional republic, but they're really pulling the strings behind the scenes, and we really don't, because the elections aren't fair or whatever, then it's no better than fascism or socialism or any of the others.
Yep. Oh, I'm in total agreement with that. And I think that's part of the point of this book that we're running out of time, so I don't want to go any further on the book, but
Yeah,
that there's a group that's trying to control things in a way that a dictator would, with the controls that they have power over. And that's arguable how powerful they are, and that's some that we can discuss in the future meetings. But his argument is that they have enough power that they can kind of act like a dictator or a fascist society as a group, rather than having one individual be the dedicated king or fascist leader. But this group has enough power to have a lot of those controls at their,
yeah,
you
agreed,
know.
agreed.
So interesting. But yeah, and the big difference to me between a lot of these things is free agency, uh,
Mhm.
free enterprise versus socialism takes away free agency in many cases, where you're forced to give X amount of your money to the government, which is then going to choose who to give it to from there. Um, and there's a lot of back and forth that could be gone, argued with that about taking care of the poor and things like that. Who takes care of the poor? Who has that responsibility if the government doesn't do it? There's also arguments about, can a socialist society really be successful, because you're taking away motivation for people to do well. Because if half of their work goes to the government that's then given for free to those that don't work, you're motivating people not to work and penalizing those that are working. And has that actually ever worked really successfully in a society where more and more of the money is being distributed to those that aren't working? So, but I don't want to go too far over. But anyway, final thoughts, Kent, before we end.
No, it was really a very interesting conversation, and I learned a lot of things. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on this stuff. I appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think we'll end today then, and plan on meeting next Tuesday at noon as usual. And I do want to go through more of this book and start where we left off here and talk more about it. And
Sounds great.
I'm sure there'll be more interesting and crazy things to talk about over the next week. So anyway, thanks, Kent, for joining, and we'll talk later.
Thank you.
Yep. See ya.